Katie Morrison stepped off the transport ship and looked around the massive space station. She had never seen anything like it. The walls curved up and disappeared into the distance. Strange lights floated in the air without any wires. Alien. Creatures walked past her speaking in languages that sounded like music or growling or clicking sounds. This was Nexus Prime, the biggest space station in the galaxy. It held the Galactic Academy, where species from hundreds of different worlds came to study together. Katie was the first human ever to attend. She felt excited and nervous at the same time. The Academy had sent her a welcome packet with basic information, but reading about alien species was very different from seeing them in person. A group of tall blue creatures with 4 arms walked past her. Their skin looked like smooth metal, and they moved like they were dancing. Behind them came something that looked like a walking tree, with eyes all over its bark. Katie picked up her 2 small bags and started walking toward the registration desk. She tried not to stare at the aliens around her, but it was impossible. Everything was so different from Earth. Even the air smelled strange, like ozone and flowers mixed together. The registration clerk was a small, fuzzy creature with huge eyes and 6 fingers on each hand. It looked up at Katie, and its eyes grew even bigger. The creature started making quick beeping sounds and pressed several buttons on its desk very fast. "Human student Katie Morrison reporting for exchange program," Katie said with a smile. She had practiced this line many times on the trip here. The clerk stared at her for a long moment. Then it pressed more buttons and spoke in a high squeaky voice. "Please wait. Supervisor coming soon. Do not move. Do not touch anything." Katie wondered why the clerk seemed so worried. She stood quietly and watched other students check in. Most of them kept looking at her and whispering to each other. Some moved away from her when they noticed her watching them. A larger alien came over to the desk. This one looked like a giant insect with purple skin and multiple eyes. It wore what looked like an official uniform with badges and symbols on it. "I am Dean Veltar," the insect creature said in perfect English. "Welcome to Nexus Prime Academy. We have been expecting you, though I must admit we are all quite curious about your species." "Thank you," Katie said. "I am very excited to be here. This place is amazing." Dean Veltar's multiple eyes blinked in sequence. "Yes, well, there are some special rules we must discuss. Your species file indicates that Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world. This means you come from a planet that most other species would find extremely dangerous." Katie frowned. "Dangerous? Earth is not that bad. Sure, we have some storms and earthquakes, but most places are pretty safe. You have active volcanoes, extreme weather patterns, deadly predators, and gravity that would crush most of our students." Dean Veltar said, "Your species has evolved to survive conditions that would kill most galactic citizens instantly." This confused Katie. She had never thought of Earth as particularly dangerous. "I guess I never really thought about it that way." Dean Veltar handed her a data pad with her room assignment and class schedule. "Your dormitory is in Section C. You will be living alone for now. Most species prefer not to share living space with Deathworlders until they get used to them." Katie felt a little hurt by this, but she tried to understand. Everything here was new and different for everyone. She took her bags and followed the directions to her room. The dormitory hallways were wide and tall to accommodate different alien body types. Katie passed doors of all different sizes. Some were huge, probably for very large species. Others were tiny, barely big enough for a cat to fit through. Her room was bigger than she expected. It had a bed, desk, chair, and a small kitchen area. The walls were plain gray, but there was a large window that showed the stars outside. Katie unpacked her few belongings and tried to make the space feel more like home. The next morning, Katie went to her first class. It was called Galactic History and Culture. She arrived early and chose a seat in the middle of the classroom. Other students began filing in, and Katie noticed they all chose seats as far away from her as possible. The teacher was a floating jellyfish-like creature that spoke by changing colors. A translation device turned the color changes into spoken words. Today we begin studying the different classification systems for inhabited worlds. Who can tell me what makes a world dangerous? Several students raised their hands or tentacles or whatever they used to get attention. One student who looked like a walking crystal spoke up. Extreme weather, dangerous animals, toxic atmosphere, high radiation, strong gravity. Correct, the teacher said, flashing bright blue. Now we have a special guest with us today. Katie Morrison comes from a Class 12 Deathworld called Earth. Perhaps she can tell us about her planet. All eyes in the room turned to Katie. She felt her face turn red. Well, Earth has lots of different environments. We have deserts and forests and oceans. The weather can be pretty extreme sometimes. We get hurricanes and tornadoes and blizzards. And yes, we have some dangerous animals like bears and sharks and snakes. A student that looked like a small dinosaur raised its claw. How do you survive the predators? Katie thought about this. Most of the time we just avoid them. We live in cities and towns where the dangerous animals usually do not go. If we go camping or hiking, we take precautions and stay alert. But humans hunt these predators for sport, another student said. This one looked like a walking plant with thorns. Our species data says humans regularly fight creatures that could easily kill them, just for entertainment. Katie laughed. Some people hunt, but most of us do not. And when people do hunt dangerous animals, they use weapons and go in groups. We are not stupid about it. The teacher flashed yellow, which the translator said meant curiosity. What about your physical capabilities? Our data indicates humans have unusual strength and endurance. I guess we are pretty tough compared to some species, Katie said. We evolved to run long distances and climb and lift heavy things. But I do not feel particularly strong. After class, Katie tried to talk to some of the other students, but they all made excuses and hurried away. She ate lunch alone in the cafeteria, surrounded by empty tables even though the room was crowded. Over the next few weeks, Katie attended her classes and tried to make friends. She joined study groups, but other students seemed distracted and nervous around her. During a physics lab, she accidentally lifted a desk that was meant to be moved by 3 students working together. The other students stared at her in shock. "How did you do that?" asked a student who looked like a large bird with blue feathers. "I just picked it up," Katie said, confused. "Is it supposed to be heavy?" The bird creature backed away from her. "That desk weighs over 200 kilograms. It should be impossible for you to lift alone." Katie looked at the desk. It felt about as heavy as her dresser back home. "Are you sure?" "It does not feel that heavy to me." Word spread quickly through the academy that the human girl had incredible strength. Students began avoiding her even more. Katie felt lonely and frustrated. She had come here to learn about other species and make friends, but instead everyone seemed afraid of her. The worst part was that she had no idea what she was doing wrong. She tried to be friendly and helpful, but other students acted like she was dangerous. She started spending most of her free time alone in her room, reading about galactic culture and trying to understand why everyone was so scared of humans. Katie missed her family and friends back on Earth. She missed places where she could relax, without worrying about frightening people just by existing. But she was determined to finish her exchange program and prove that humans could fit into galactic society. She had no idea that her biggest test was about to begin. Katie had been at the academy for 3 weeks when she first saw Warlord Prince Thakmer. She was sitting alone in the cafeteria, picking at her lunch of something that was supposed to taste like chicken, but definitely did not. The room suddenly got very quiet, and every student turned to look at the entrance. Thakmer walked into the room like he owned it. He was huge, almost 9 feet tall, with dark gray skin covered in battle scars. His body looked like it was made of muscle and metal. Parts, tubes and wires ran under his skin, connecting to ports on his arms and back. His eyes glowed red, and when he moved, Katie could hear the quiet hum of machinery inside him. Behind him walked 6 other Krek students, all almost as big and scary looking as their leader. They wore dark uniforms with symbols that Katie did not recognize. Everyone in the cafeteria watched them with fear and respect. The Kreks were the most powerful military species in the galaxy. They had conquered 17 different star systems and were still expanding their empire. Other species either fought them or joined them, but nobody ignored them. Thakmer got his food and sat at a large table in the center of the room. The other students gave him plenty of space. Katie noticed that even the academy staff seemed nervous around him. She went back to eating her fake chicken and tried not to stare. Katie learned more about the Kreks over the next few days. They were warrior culture that believed strength was the only thing that mattered. Young Kreks proved themselves through combat, and the strongest became leaders. Thakmer was the son of a Kreks emperor and had never lost a fight in his life. The Krek students dominated the academy's social structure. They sat wherever they wanted, took whatever they wanted, and other students moved out of their way. The teachers treated them carefully, never pushing them too hard or criticizing them directly. Katie found this unfair, but she tried to mind her own business. She had enough problems trying to fit in without making enemies of the most dangerous students. At the academy, the accident happened on a Thursday during lunch rush. Katie was carrying her tray to an empty table when another student bumped into her. She stumbled and crashed directly into Thakmer, who was walking past with his own tray. The collision sent Katie's food flying. Her nutritional gel splattered across Thakmer's chest and arms. Her drink spilled all over the ceremonial medals on his uniform. The metal plates that showed his rank and family history were now dripping with sticky blue liquid. The entire cafeteria went silent. Katie looked up at the towering Kreks warrior, whose red eyes were now glowing brighter with anger. She could hear the mechanical parts in his body working faster, making angry buzzing sounds. "Oh no, I am so sorry," Katie said quickly. She grabbed napkins from nearby tables and tried to clean the mess off his uniform. "Let me help clean this up." Thakmer stood perfectly still as Katie dabbed at his medals with napkins. Every other student in the room stared in complete shock. Nobody had ever dared to touch Warlord Prince Thakmer. Some species considered it an act of war to make physical contact with a Kreks noble without permission. "Human," Thakmer said in a voice like grinding metal, "you have dishonored me." Katie stopped cleaning and looked up at him. "It was an accident. I really did not mean to bump into you. Someone pushed me and I lost my balance." "Intent does not matter," Thakmer said. "You have spilled food on my battle honors. You have touched my person without permission. You have made me look foolish in front of witnesses." Katie did not understand why he was so upset. Back on Earth, this would have been embarrassing, but not a big deal. People apologized, helped clean up, and moved on with their lives. "I said I was sorry," Katie replied. "Accidents happen. Can we just forget about it?" The other Krek students made shocked hissing sounds. Several alien students near them actually fainted. Katie had just suggested that a Krek's warlord prince should ignore an insult to his honor. Thakmer's mechanical parts were buzzing so loudly now that other students started backing away from the noise. His hands were clenched into fists, and Katie could see sparks coming from the ports in his arms. "In Krek's culture, such an insult can only be answered one way," Thakmer said. "I formally challenge you to single combat. We will fight according to ancient law until one of us cannot continue." Katie blinked at him. "You want to fight me? Over spilled food?" "I do not want to fight you, human. I am required to fight you." My honor demands it. Katie had read about different alien customs during her preparation for the exchange program, but she had not paid much attention to the parts about formal combat. She thought Thakmer was asking her to some kind of sporting event or competition. Okay, she said with a shrug. If it will make you feel better, we can have a fight or whatever. When do you want to do this? The cafeteria erupted in shocked gasps and chittering sounds. Students from dozens of different species stared at Katie like she had just volunteered to jump into a black hole. Thakmer looked surprised for the first time since Katie had met him. You accept my challenge? Sure, Katie said. How does this work exactly? Do we need gloves and a referee or something? The combat will take place in 3 days in the Academy Arena, Thakmer said. Weapons and armor are permitted. The fight continues until one participant yields or is unable to continue. Katie nodded. Sounds fair. Should I bring anything special? Thakmer stared at her for a long moment. Bring whatever you think will help you survive, human. He turned and walked away, followed by his group of followers. The cafeteria slowly returned to normal, but Katie could feel everyone staring at her. She finished cleaning up the spilled food and went to find an empty table. A small furry student with big ears approached her table carefully. Excuse me, Katie Morrison, did you just accept a formal combat challenge from Warlord Prince Thakmer? I guess so, Katie said. Why is everyone acting so weird about it? The furry student sat down across from her, looking very worried. Do you know who Thakmer is? He's a Krek student who got really upset about some spilled food. He is the most dangerous warrior at this academy. He has killed over 200 enemies in real battles. He has never lost a single combat challenge. His biomechanical augmentations make him stronger and faster than almost any living creature. Katie was starting to realize she might have made a mistake. Biomechanical augmentations? The Kreks replace parts of their bodies with machines to make themselves better fighters. Thakmer has mechanical muscles, enhanced reflexes, armor plating under his skin, and built-in weapon systems. He is basically a walking war machine. Oh, Katie said quietly. That sounds pretty serious. The last student who challenged him ended up in the medical center for 6 months, the furry student continued. And that was a trained Zenthari warrior with military experience. You are just a civilian exchange student. Katie felt her stomach starting to hurt. Can I take back my acceptance? No, once a formal challenge is accepted in front of witnesses, galactic law says it must be completed. Breaking the agreement would cause a diplomatic incident between Earth and the Kreks Empire. Katie put her head in her hands. She had come to the academy to study alien cultures and make friends. Instead, she had accidentally agreed to fight the most dangerous student in the school. And she had 3 days to figure out how to survive. The furry student patted her arm gently. Maybe you should call your family on Earth. Tell them goodbye while you still can. Katie looked up at him. Is it really that bad? I am sorry, Katie Morrison, but yes, it is really that bad. Word of the challenge spread through the academy faster than Katie could have imagined. By dinner time, everyone knew that the human exchange student was going to fight Warlord Prince Thakmer in 3 days. Students approached her all evening to ask if she was crazy or to say goodbye. Katie spent the night in her room, reading everything she could find about Krek's combat traditions and formal challenges. The more she learned, the more scared she became. This was not a friendly competition or sporting event. This was a fight to the death between warriors, and she was definitely not a warrior. She tried to call her parents on Earth, but the communication delay between Earth and Nexus Prime was over 6 hours. By the time they could have a real conversation, the fight would be over. Katie looked out her window at the stars and wondered if she would ever see Earth again. She had wanted to experience other cultures, but she had never expected that experience might kill her. 3 days suddenly seemed like a very short time. Katie spent the next 3 days trying to prepare for the fight. She visited the Academy library and read everything she could find about Krex warriors and combat techniques. Most of what she learned made her feel worse about her chances. Krex had been fighting wars for thousands of years. They started training their children for combat before they could walk properly. By the time they were adults, they had replaced most of their natural body parts with mechanical upgrades that made them faster, stronger, and tougher than almost any other species. Thakmer was not just any Krex warrior. He was royalty, which meant he had access to the best upgrades and training available. His biomechanical armor was made from materials that cost more than most starships. His weapon systems could punch holes through solid steel. Katie tried to find information about human combat abilities, but there was almost nothing in the galactic databases. Earth was so new to galactic civilization that most species knew very little about humans beyond the basic fact that they came from a dangerous planet. She did find one research paper written by a Xanthari scientist who had studied human physiology. It mentioned that humans had unusual endurance and pain tolerance compared to most species, but it also noted that they had no natural armor or weapons. The paper concluded that humans would probably not survive long in galactic civilization without advanced technology to protect them. This did not make Katie feel any better. On the second day, Katie went to the Academy's medical center to ask about first aid training. She thought maybe if she knew how to treat injuries, she could help herself if she got hurt during the fight. The medical staff looked at her with pity when she explained why she was there. The head doctor, a tall, thin creature with 6 arms and crystal skin, shook its head sadly. "I have treated many injuries from combat training," the doctor said. "But what Thakmer's weapons will do to an unarmored human body cannot be repaired. I am sorry, but the best I can do is promise to make your final moments as comfortable as possible." Katie left the medical center feeling even more depressed. She walked through the Academy halls and noticed that other students were avoiding her more than usual. Some of them looked at her with sympathy, like she was already dead. That evening, Katie called her best friend back on Earth using the Academy's communication system. Because of the time delay, it took hours to have a real conversation, but Katie needed to talk to someone from home. "You did what?" her friend Lisa said when Katie finally explained the situation. "You accepted a death match with an alien warlord over spilled food?" "I did not know it was a death match," Katie said. "I thought he was asking me to play some kind of game or sport. Nobody explained how serious this formal challenge thing is. Can you get out of it somehow? Claim diplomatic immunity or something?" "I asked Dean Veltar about that. He said breaking the challenge agreement would cause major problems between Earth and the Krex Empire. Earth's government would not be happy if I started a war by accident." Lisa was quiet for a long moment. "Katie, you need to take this seriously. If this guy is as dangerous as you say, you could actually die." "I know," Katie said. "I am scared. Lisa, I came here to study and make friends, not to fight monsters." "Then do not fight fair," Lisa said. "You always were too nice for your own good. If this is really life or death, then do whatever you have to do to survive." Katie thought about this after the call ended. Maybe Lisa was right. Maybe she was thinking about this the wrong way. She had been trying to prepare for an honorable combat between warriors, but she was not a warrior. She was just a college student who had gotten in over her head. On the third day, news of the challenge had spread far beyond the Academy. Ships arrived at Nexus Prime, carrying representatives from dozens of different species who wanted to witness the fight. Some came to see if humans were really as tough as the rumors suggested. Others came to watch what they expected to be a very quick execution. Katie woke up early and tried to eat breakfast, but her stomach was too nervous to keep food down. She put on her regular Academy exercise clothes, plain gray pants and a matching shirt. She did not have any armor or weapons, so there was no point in trying to look intimidating. The Academy's combat arena was huge, designed to accommodate fights between species of very different sizes and abilities. The floor was made of some kind of super strong metal that could survive almost any kind of weapon. Energy shields surrounded the fighting area to protect the audience from stray shots. When Katie arrived at the arena, she was shocked to see how many aliens had come to watch. The stands were packed with creatures from all over the galaxy. Some of them were taking bets on how long she would survive. Most of the betting pools gave her less than 30 seconds. Katie sat in a small waiting room next to the arena and tried to calm her nerves. Through the walls, she could hear the crowd getting louder and more excited. Someone knocked on her door, and Dean Veltar entered with several other Academy officials. "Katie Morrison," Dean Veltar said, "are you certain you wish to proceed with this challenge? Even now, we might be able to negotiate some alternative arrangement." "What kind of alternative?" Katie asked. "Public apology, financial compensation, perhaps a formal statement of submission to Warlord Prince Thakmer's authority." Katie thought about this. Part of her wanted to take the easy way out and apologize. But another part of her was starting to get angry. She had done nothing wrong except accidentally spill some food, and now everyone expected her to bow down to a bully who was threatening to kill her over it. "No," Katie said. "I will not apologize for an accident, and I definitely will not submit to someone who thinks murder is an appropriate response to spilled lunch." Dean Veltar's multiple eyes blinked in surprise. "Very well. The challenge will proceed as agreed." A few minutes later, Katie heard her name announced over the arena's speaker system. She walked through a tunnel and emerged into the bright lights of the combat arena. The crowd noise was overwhelming, thousands of alien voices, cheering and shouting in dozens of different languages. Katie walked to the center of the arena and looked up at the packed stands. She had never seen so many different species in one place. Some of them looked excited, others looked worried, and many looked like they were just waiting for a show. The arena announcer, a floating creature that looked like a jellyfish made of light, began explaining the rules of formal combat to the audience. Katie tried to listen, but the crowd was so loud that she could only catch pieces of what was being said. Then the other entrance tunnel opened, and Thakmer made his appearance. Katie had seen him before in the cafeteria, but seeing him in full combat armor was completely different. He looked like a walking tank. His armor was black and silver, covered with spikes and glowing symbols. Mechanical arms extended from his back, each one carrying a different weapon. His helmet had glowing red eyes that tracked Katie's movements as he walked. Each step Thakmer took made the arena floor vibrate. Katie could hear the whining sounds of power systems charging up inside his armor. Targeting lasers painted red dots on her chest and arms as his weapon systems locked onto her. The crowd went wild when they saw Thakmer. Many of them were clearly fans who had come specifically to watch him fight. They chanted his name and cheered as he took his position across from Katie. Katie suddenly felt very small and very alone standing in the middle of the huge arena. She was wearing simple exercise clothes and had no weapons or armor. Across from her stood a 9-foot-tall war machine that had never lost a fight. Dean Veltar floated into the center of the arena using some kind of anti-gravity device. His voice was amplified so everyone could hear him clearly. "Citizens of the galaxy," he announced, "we are gathered to witness a formal combat challenge under ancient galactic law. Warlord Prince Thakmer of the Krex Dominion has issued challenge to Katie Morrison of Earth over a matter of personal honor." The crowd cheered again. Katie noticed that most of the cheering was for Thakmer. "The rules are simple," Dean Veltar continued. "Combat continues until one participant yields or is unable to continue. All weapons and defensive systems are permitted. Medical assistance will be provided when the combat ends. Dean Veltar looked at both fighters. Do both participants understand and accept these terms? I accept, Thukmer said. His voice came through speakers in his armor and sounded like grinding metal. Katie took a deep breath. I accept. Very well. Participants, take your positions. Katie and Thakmer walked to opposite sides of a large circle marked on the arena floor. Katie could feel her heart beating fast, but she tried to stay calm. She thought about what Lisa had said about not fighting fair. She thought about all the aliens who had bet against her surviving. She thought about how unfair this whole situation was. Maybe it was time to show the galaxy what humans were really capable of. Dean Veltar raised one of his many arms. Combat begins in 10 seconds. The arena fell silent except for the humming of Thakmer's weapon systems charging to full power. 5 seconds. Katie rolled her shoulders and took a deep breath. Begin. The moment Dean Veltar said begin, Thakmer opened fire with everything he had. Bright blue plasma bolts shot from cannons on his arms. Red laser beams fired from his shoulder weapons. Missiles no bigger than Katie's thumb launched from ports. In his chest armor, energy weapons that could cut through starship armor, all aimed at the small human girl standing 30 feet away. The arena filled with blinding light, and the sound of weapons that could level buildings. Explosions echoed off the walls as different types of energy weapons struck the same target over and over again. The air itself caught fire from the heat of the plasma bolts. The audience leaned forward in their seats, waiting to see what would be left of the human when the smoke cleared. Some of the more sensitive species covered their eyes, not wanting to watch someone die so violently. But Katie did not dodge. She did not run. She did not even flinch. She just stood there. The plasma bolts that could melt through steel struck her in the chest and scattered like water hitting a rock. The laser beams that could cut diamonds bounced off her skin and shot harmlessly into the arena walls. The tiny missiles exploded against her body and did nothing except make her clothes a little smoky. Katie stood in the exact same spot where she had started, with the same calm expression on her face. She looked like someone had turned the air conditioning up too high, and she was slightly annoyed by the cold air. The arena fell completely silent, except for the whining sounds of Thakmer's weapons recharging. Nobody in the audience could believe what they were seeing. The most advanced personal weapons in the galaxy had just fired at point-blank range for 12 straight seconds, and the target was completely unharmed. Thakmer stared at Katie through his helmet display. His armor's computer systems were giving him error messages. According to every sensor he had, all of his weapons had hit their target perfectly. The targeting computers showed direct hits with maximum power. But the human was still standing. They're like nothing had happened. Katie brushed a small bit of dust off her shoulder and looked up at the towering armored figure. Are you done? She asked politely. Her voice carried clearly through the silent arena. Every alien in the audience heard her casual question, as if she was asking someone to pass the salt at dinner instead of asking a deadly warrior if he was finished trying to kill her. Thakmer checked his weapon systems. The plasma cannons needed 3 minutes to recharge their energy cells. The laser arrays were overheated and would take even longer to cool down. The missile launchers were empty and could not be reloaded during combat. His most powerful weapons, the ones that had never failed to destroy any target, were all temporarily offline, but he still had his physical weapons. Built into his armor were gravity hammers that could crush solid rock, vibration blades that could cut through any known material, quantum disruptors that could tear apart the bonds between atoms. Surely his close combat weapons would work where his ranged attacks had failed. Thakmer activated his jump jets and launched himself across the arena toward Katie. He moved faster than most creatures could even see. His heavy armor turned into a guided missile aimed directly at the small human. Katie watched him coming and tilted her head slightly, like she was trying to figure out what he was doing. Thakmer swung his gravity hammer with enough force to flatten A small building. The weapon created a field that multiplied its impact by a factor of 50. When it hit Katie in the side, it should have turned her into a thin paste spread across the arena floor. Instead, the gravity hammer bounced off Katie's ribs with a loud clang, like someone had just hit a church bell with a stick. The weapon's gravity field collapsed from the feedback, and Thakmar stumbled backward from the unexpected resistance. Katie looked down at where the hammer had hit her. "That tickled," she said. Thakmar tried again with his vibration blades. These weapons could cut through the armor of main battle tanks. He slashed at Katie's arm with enough force to cut her completely in half. The blade struck her forearm and shattered into pieces. Metal fragments scattered across the arena floor. As Katie examined the spot where she had been hit, there was not even a scratch on her skin. "Your weapons seem to be broken," Katie observed helpfully. Thakmar was starting to panic. In his entire life, he had never encountered anything that could resist his weapons like this. His armor's computer was telling him that his attacks were connecting with maximum force, but the target was showing 0 damage. He activated his quantum disruptors, the most dangerous weapons built into his armor. These could tear apart matter at the molecular level. Nothing in the known galaxy could resist quantum disruption. He pressed both disruptor arrays against Katie's chest and fired at full power. The disruptors hummed for a few seconds, then shut down with warning alarms. Katie looked down at the weapons pressed against her shirt. "Those are kind of warm," she said. "Are they supposed to get that hot?" Thakmar stepped back and stared at her. His quantum disruptors had overloaded, trying to affect her molecular structure. According to his armor's analysis, it was like trying to disrupt a neutron star. The human's atomic bonds were so strong that his weapons could not even begin to affect them. The audience was in complete chaos. Aliens were shouting and clicking and buzzing in dozens of languages. Many of them were trying to leave their seats, but they could not stop watching the impossible scene in the arena. Betting pools that had been heavily weighted against Katie were now paying out impossible odds to the few beings who had bet on her to survive. Nobody had expected her to win, but some had thought she might last longer than 30 seconds just by running away. Instead, she had stood still and let one of the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy attack her with everything he had. And none of it had worked. Katie looked around at the shocked audience, then back at Thakmar. "Is this normal for your formal combat challenges? Because it seems kind of one-sided." Thakmar's armor systems were flashing red warnings. His power core was running low from using so many high-energy weapons. His backup systems were damaged from the feedback when his attacks failed. He was quickly running out of options. He tried his emergency protocols, weapons designed to be used only when facing the most dangerous enemies. Energy whips that could cut through starship hulls, plasma bombs that could level city blocks, sonic disruptors that could shatter bones from the inside. Every weapon failed. Katie stood calmly in the middle of the arena as attack after attack bounced harmlessly off her body. She looked like someone watching a fireworks show that was not very impressive. Finally, after nearly 5 minutes of constant attacks, Thakmar's weapon systems went completely offline. His armor's power core was drained. His backup batteries were exhausted. Even his emergency reserves were empty. He stood in the arena, 8 feet tall and 800 pounds of the most advanced combat technology in the galaxy, and he was helpless. His weapons were offline, his armor was damaged, and the small human girl he had been trying to kill was looking at him with concern. "Are you okay?" Katie asked. "You look tired." Thakmar could not answer. His voice systems were offline along with everything else. He could barely move in his powered armor without the electrical systems to assist him. Katie started walking toward him, and for the first time in his life, Warlord Prince Thakmar felt genuine fear. Every step Katie took seemed normal, casual, like she was walking across a park instead of a combat arena. But Thakmor's remaining sensors could detect the power in her movements. Each footstep created tiny vibrations in the super-strong arena floor. The air moved differently around her, like she was much denser than she appeared. "You used a lot of energy trying to hurt me," Katie said as she got closer. "Maybe you should sit down and rest." Thakmor tried to back away, but his armor was too heavy to move quickly without power assistance. Katie reached him before he could retreat. She looked up at him with the same friendly expression she had worn when she first arrived at the academy. "I think there has been enough fighting for one day." Katie reached up and gently placed her hands on the chest plate of Thakmor's armor. Her fingers looked small and delicate against the quantum-dense battle armor that had cost more than most planets' entire military budgets. "Let me help you out of this heavy suit," Katie said kindly. Then she squeezed and everything changed. Katie squeezed the chest plate of Thakmor's armor, and the sound that followed would be remembered by every witness for the rest of their lives. The quantum-dense metal that could resist. Starship weapons crumpled like paper. The biomechanical systems that had taken decades to perfect collapsed with a grinding shriek of torn metal and sparking electronics. 800 pounds of the most advanced personal combat armor ever created folded inward like an empty soda can. The arena filled with the sounds of breaking technology. Computer systems sparked and died. Power conduits snapped with bright flashes of electricity. The microfusion reactor that powered the armor shut down with an alarmed whine as its containment housing was compressed beyond safe operating limits. Thakmor found himself lifted 3 feet off the ground, held up by a human girl whose hands were crushing his legendary armor like it was made of clay. The weapon systems that had made him the most feared warrior in his species were reduced to expensive scrap metal in less than a second. Katie looked up at him with the same polite expression she had worn throughout the entire fight. "Sorry about your suit," she said. "I probably should have warned you that Earth girls are pretty tough." She gently set Thakmor down on the arena floor. His armor made horrible grinding sounds as the twisted metal tried to shift back into proper position. Most of his mechanical systems were completely destroyed. The few that still worked were flashing error messages and warning lights. Thakmor stood there in shock, looking down at the remains of his combat armor. The chest plate was folded in half. His arm weapons hung at weird angles, completely useless. The targeting systems in his helmet were dark, and he could smell smoke coming from the damaged electronics. The arena was absolutely silent. Thousands of aliens stared at the scene without making a sound. Many of them were trying to understand what they had just witnessed. The most advanced military technology in the galaxy had been destroyed by a college student using nothing but her bare hands. Katie stepped back and brushed some metal dust off her fingers. "I hope you are not hurt," she said to Thakmor. "The armor looks pretty damaged, but you should be okay inside it." Thakmor tried to speak, but his voice systems were offline. He tried to move, but his powered joints were locked in place by the twisted metal. He was trapped inside his own armor, unable to fight, unable to flee, unable to do anything except stand there and stare at the human who had just destroyed everything he thought he knew about combat. Dean Veltar floated down into the arena, his multiple eyes blinking rapidly as he tried to process what had happened. According to galactic law, formal combat continued until one participant yielded or was unable to continue. Thakmor was clearly unable to continue fighting. "The combat is concluded," Dean Veltar announced to the stunned audience. "Katie Morrison of Earth is the victor." The announcement seemed to break the spell that had fallen over the arena. Suddenly, everyone was talking at once. Aliens were shouting in dozens of languages, trying to explain to each other what they had seen. Others were frantically making calls on communication devices, spreading news of the impossible fight to contacts across the galaxy. Katie waved cheerfully at the audience, like she had just finished a school presentation instead of a death match. Many of the aliens waved back automatically before realizing what they were doing and stopping in confusion. Medical teams rushed into the arena to check on both fighters. They surrounded Thakmer with scanning equipment, trying to figure out how to get him out of his damaged armor safely. The twisted metal had locked his joints in place, and several of his mechanical augmentations were sending error signals. One of the medical technicians approached Katie with a scanner. "Are you injured?" the technician asked. "Do you need any medical attention?" Katie looked down at herself. Her clothes were a little smoky from all the weapons fire, and there was some metal dust on her shirt from when she had crushed Thakmer's armor. Otherwise, she looked exactly the same as when the fight had started. "I feel fine," Katie said. "Thank you for asking." The medical scanner beeped and showed readings that made the technician's eyes grow wide. According to the device, Katie had no injuries at all, not even minor bruises or scratches. Her vital signs were completely normal, like she had just taken a casual walk instead of surviving concentrated weapons fire from a Krex Warlord. The technician ran the scanner over Katie 3 more times, convinced that the machine was broken. Each scan showed the same impossible results. The human was completely unharmed. How is this possible? The technician whispered. Katie shrugged. "I guess I am tougher than I look. My little sister hits harder than his guns do." This comment was overheard by several reporters who had been covering the fight. Within minutes, news services across the galaxy were broadcasting the quote, "Human claims sibling hits harder than military-grade plasma weapons," became one of the most repeated headlines in galactic history. Katie left the arena while the medical teams were still trying to extract Thakmer from his ruined armor. She wanted to go back to her room and take a shower. The weapon's fire had made her clothes smell like burnt ozone, and she had a xenobiology exam the next morning that she needed to study for. The walk back to her dormitory was unlike anything Katie had experienced at the academy. Students who had been avoiding her for weeks now stared at her with expressions of awe and terror. Some of them actually bowed as she walked past. Others pressed themselves against the walls, giving her as much space as possible. Katie tried to smile and wave at the other students, but this only seemed to make them more nervous. She decided to just walk quickly to her room and let things calm down. But things did not calm down. Within hours, recordings of the fight were being broadcast on every major news network in the galaxy. The footage of Katie standing motionless, while advanced weapons fired at her, became the most watched video in galactic history. Military analysts tried to explain how a human could resist weapons that could destroy armored vehicles. Scientists proposed theories about Earth's gravity and radiation, creating impossible human durability. Politicians began emergency meetings to discuss what this meant for galactic power structures. Katie missed most of this excitement because she was studying for her exam. She had always been a good student, and she was not going to let her grades suffer just because she had accidentally become famous. The next morning, Katie woke up to find reporters from dozens of different species camped outside her dormitory. They all wanted to interview the human who had defeated the famous Krex Warlord. Katie politely declined to comment and went to her xenobiology class. Professor Kithrak, a tall insect-like creature with compound eyes, stared at Katie as she entered the classroom. Every other student turned to look at her as well. The room was completely silent. "Good morning, Katie Morrison," Professor Kithrak said carefully. "I trust you are well after yesterday's activities." "Yes, thank you," Katie said, taking her usual seat in the middle of the classroom. "I am ready for the exam." Professor Kithrak blinked all of his eyes at once. "Perhaps we should postpone the examination, given the circumstances." "Why?" Katie asked. "I studied for it. I am ready." The professor looked around at the other students who were all still staring at Katie. "Very well. Please begin when you are ready." Katie took her exam and finished it in the normal amount of time. She answered questions about alien biology and planetary ecosystems, just like any other student. When she was done, she turned in her paper and left for her next class. Behind her, Professor Kithrak stared at the exam paper in amazement. Not only had Katie answered every question correctly, but her handwriting was neater than usual. Surviving a deathmatch with the galaxy's most dangerous warrior had not affected her academic performance at all. Word spread quickly that the terrifying human Deathworlder was also an excellent student who was more concerned about her grades than her galactic fame. This somehow made her even more frightening to the other species. Over the following days, Katie's life at the academy changed completely. She no longer ate alone in the cafeteria, though this was because other students were too scared to sit near her rather than because she had made friends. Professors treated her with careful respect, and academy staff members bowed politely when they saw her in the halls. Katie found all of this attention confusing and a little sad. She had wanted to make friends and learn about other cultures, but now everyone was more afraid of her than ever. She spent most of her free time alone in her room, reading about galactic history and missing her family on Earth. 3 weeks after the fight, Katie received a visitor. Thicmer stood outside her door, no longer wearing his combat armor. He looked smaller without all the mechanical augmentations, though he was still much taller than Katie. "May I come in?" he asked politely. Katie was surprised to see him, but she opened her door and invited him into her room. Thicmer sat carefully in her desk chair, which creaked under his weight. "I wanted to thank you," he said. "Thank me for what?" Katie asked. "For showing me that strength is not the same as power," Thicmer replied. "I have spent my entire life believing that the strongest warrior would always win. You proved that wrong without even trying to hurt me."